boy with porcelain eyes. Emily and David, a young couple yearning for a child, stumbled upon Ethan in a quiet orphanage nestled amidst rolling hills. He was a wisp of a boy, barely 8, with a mop of unruly brown hair and the most unsettling feature, eyes that seemed carved from polished porcelain. They were devoid of the usual warmth and depth of human eyes, replaced by an icy, vacant blue that sent shivers down Emily's spine. David, a pragmatic lawyer, dismissed her unease as nerves. "He's just an orphan, Em. Maybe a little lost," he said, his hand finding hers in a gesture of comfort. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about Ethan. Despite her initial apprehension, Emily found herself drawn to Ethan's quiet demeanor. When he smiled, a rare and fleeting occurrence, his whole face transformed, showcasing a vulnerability that melted her reservations. They adopted him that very day, eager to shower him with the love and care he so desperately needed. Their joy, however, was short-lived. Strange things began to happen soon after Ethan moved in. At first, they were subtle, misplaced objects, doors creaking open on their own, an unsettling feeling of being watched. Then the dolls arrived. Ethan seemed fixated on them. A dusty porcelain doll from a thrift store became his constant companion. He carried it everywhere, whispering secrets to its painted face and arranging its stiff limbs in elaborate poses. More dolls followed, each one more disturbing than the last. Some were missing limbs, their chipped porcelain revealing hollow insides. Others had vacant, button eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. As the collection grew, Ethan's behavior changed. He became withdrawn, speaking less and spending hours locked in his room, arranging the dolls in intricate tableaus. The dolls began to resemble the family, a miniature Emily, David, and even a smaller doll with unsettlingly familiar porcelain eyes. One night, Emily woke to a blood-curdling scream. Rushing to Ethan's room, she found him in a frenzy, surrounded by the dolls. The miniature Emily doll lay on the floor, its porcelain head shattered, a smear of red paint across its tiny chest. A wave of nausea washed over her as she noticed the glint of a sharp object in Ethan's hand, a shard of porcelain, perfectly mirroring the one embedded in the doll's chest. Ethan stared at her, his porcelain eyes reflecting a terrifying calmness. "I had to punish her," he said in a monotone voice, devoid of any emotion. "She was mean to me." Panic clawed at Emily's throat. This wasn't normal childhood behavior. Fear turned to a cold dread as she realized the dolls weren't just playthings. They were somehow connected to Ethan, reflecting his emotions, perhaps even amplifying them. David, initially skeptical of Emily's concerns, grew increasingly worried as the incidents became more frequent. Furniture would move on its own, and whispers, seemingly emanating from the dolls, filled the house at night. Then, one evening, David found a message scrawled in jagged letters on their bedroom mirror. "They will take you." Driven by desperation, Emily and David delved into Ethan's past. The orphanage offered little information, only confirming his arrival after a fire that claimed his entire family. A local legend whispered of a dollmaker who practiced dark magic, crafting dolls imbued with the spirits of the dead. The fire, they said, consumed his workshop and everything inside. A horrifying possibility dawned on them. What if Ethan wasn't just an orphan? What if he was somehow connected to the deceased dollmaker, his spirit residing in one of the dolls, influencing Ethan's actions? Desperate for help, they consulted a local historian, a wizened old woman named Ms. Hawthorne. She listened intently to their story, her face grim. "The dolls," she rasped, her voice raspy with age. "They are vessels, not for spirits, but for the darkness within." Ms. Hawthorne spoke of a ritual, a way to sever the connection between Ethan and the dolls. But the ritual required a sacrifice, an object of utmost importance, imbued with love and belonging. It was a gamble, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Emily knew what she had to do. On a moonless night, with David holding Ethan back, she stood before the collection of dolls. Clutching a worn teddy bear, a gift from her late mother, she began the ritual. The air crackled with unseen energy as Miss Hawthorne chanted in an ancient language. The dolls writhed, their painted faces contorting in a silent scream. A deafening crash resonated through the house. Ethan screamed, a chilling sound that tore at Emily's heart. When she opened her eyes, the room was bathed in an eerie blue light. The dolls were still, their vacant eyes locked on Emily. In Ethan's hand, the porcelain shard that mirrored the doll's wound had vanished. He looked at her, a flicker of emotion crossing his porcelain eyes, a chilling mixture of fear and rage. "You broke them," he whispered, his voice laced with a venom that sent shivers down Emily's spine. The air grew thick, a suffocating pressure pressing down on them. Then, a voice, cold and disembodied, echoed in the room. "Foolish mortals, you cannot sever the ties that bind." The voice seemed to emanate from all the dolls at once, a chorus of whispers that chilled them to the bone. It was then that Emily noticed a change in Ethan. His eyes, once a vacant blue, flickered with a malevolent intelligence. A cruel smile stretched across his lips, revealing sharp, pointed teeth that hadn't been there before. This wasn't the boy they had adopted, not anymore. This was something else, a dark entity using Ethan as a vessel. David lunged forward, grabbing Ethan's arm. But Ethan's strength was inhuman. He flung David across the room with a sickening thud. Terror clawed at Emily's throat. This was no longer a fight against dolls. It was a battle against an ancient evil unleashed. Desperately, she cast a glance at Miss Hawthorne, who stood trembling in the corner. The old woman met her gaze, a flicker of determination replacing the fear. With a shaky hand, she pointed a gnarled finger at a shelf across the room. On it, nestled amongst dusty books, lay a small, intricately carved wooden box. "The binding box," Miss Hawthorne croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "It holds the key to trapping the entity." Emily understood. The ritual might have failed to sever the connection, but it had weakened the bond. Now they had a chance to contain it, but reaching the box was a daunting task. Ethan, now fully possessed by the entity, stalked towards her with inhuman speed. His eyes, glowing with a malevolent blue light, burned into hers. Thinking fast, Emily snatched the teddy bear, her mother's love a tangible warmth in her hand. "This belonged to my mother," she shouted, her voice shaking. "It holds more love than anything you can possess." Ethan paused, his head tilting in curiosity. The entity, seemingly intrigued by the object, struggled for control. This was her chance. With a desperate lunge, Emily dashed towards the shelf, dodging shards of porcelain the possessed Ethan flung at her. She snatched the box, feeling a surge of energy flow through it as she held it tight. As she turned, the possessed Ethan was upon her. His porcelain face contorted into a grotesque mask of rage. But before he could reach her, Miss Hawthorne, with a sudden burst of strength, tripped him with her cane. The entity shrieked in fury, a sound that shook the very foundation of the house. With a desperate cry, Emily slammed the box shut, the carvings on its surface glowing with an ethereal light. A wave of energy pulsed through the room, throwing them all back. The dolls exploded in a shower of porcelain shards. The blue light dissipated, leaving behind a thick, oppressive darkness. When Emily dared to open her eyes, the room was silent. Ethan lay unconscious on the floor, his face pale and devoid of the malevolent intelligence it had held moments before. David, shaken but alive, crawled to her side. Miss Hawthorne, drained but triumphant, lay gasping for breath. The ordeal was over, but at a terrible cost. The dolls were destroyed, a chilling reminder of the darkness they had contained. They waited, a heavy silence hanging in the air, unsure if the entity had been truly contained or simply biding its time. Days turned into weeks, then months. Ethan remained in a coma, his porcelain eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. The doctors were baffled, offering no explanation for his condition. Emily and David kept a constant vigil, their love for the boy they had adopted battling the fear of the entity that might still reside within him. One day, while reading a book to Ethan, Emily noticed a single tear roll down his cheek. It was a small miracle, a sign of life they hadn't dared to hope for. Soon, Ethan woke, a child again, confused and scared. He had no memory of the events that had unfolded or the entity that had possessed him. Relief washed over Emily and David, but the scars of their ordeal remained. They kept the box containing the entity hidden away, a constant reminder of the darkness they had faced. Ethan, too, carried a shadow within him, a haunted look in his eyes that mirrored the unsettling blue of the porcelain dolls. Years passed. Ethan grew into a young man, haunted by fragmented memories and nightmares of screaming dolls and a cold, blue light. He never fully recovered his early childhood innocence. Despite the therapy and love he received, a sliver of unease always lingered. He excelled in art, his drawings often depicting disturbingly realistic dolls with vacant eyes. Then, one day, while visiting the local museum with his art class, Ethan stumbled upon an exhibit on ancient artifacts. His gaze fell upon a collection of intricately carved wooden boxes, remarkably similar to the one his parents kept hidden away. A chill ran down his spine as he felt an unexplainable pull towards one particular box. As he leaned closer, the memory, long suppressed, flooded back the ritual, the dolls, the chilling voice. Panic seized him, and he stumbled back, the weight of the repressed trauma threatening to crush him. He confided in Emily, hesitant and scared, revealing the fragmented memories and the strange connection he felt to the box at the museum. Emily, her face pale, decided it was time to tell Ethan the truth. She revealed the horrifying events of his childhood, the entity that had possessed him, and the box that contained it. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he processed the story, a mixture of disbelief and horror washing over him. They decided to consult Miss Hawthorne, now a frail woman nearing the end of her life. When she saw Ethan, a flicker of recognition crossed her face. "The entity," she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. "It feeds on darkness, on fear. The boy, he will be its target." These words filled Emily and David with dread. They knew they couldn't avoid the box at the museum forever. It was a ticking time bomb, a beacon for the entity trapped within their own box. A plan had to be formed, a way to permanently destroy the entity before it could possess Ethan again. Ms. Hawthorne revealed the final part of the ritual, a dangerous act that required Ethan to confront the entity within the museum box. He would need to be strong, to channel his own light to overpower the entity's darkness. It was a risky gamble, but it was their only hope. The night of the confrontation arrived, cloaked in an oppressive silence. Emily and David waited outside the museum, their hearts pounding against their ribs. Inside, Ethan stood before the box, his face etched with a mixture of fear and determination. With trembling hands, he lifted the lid. A wave of icy coldness washed over him. The box contained nothing but a swirling vortex of black mist, pulsating with malevolent energy. From within, a chilling voice echoed, a chorus of the whispers he remembered from his childhood. "You cannot escape me, boy. You are mine." Ethan closed his eyes, focusing on the love of his parents, the warmth that had anchored him through the years. He remembered Miss Hawthorne's words, "Light conquers darkness." With a deep breath, he summoned his courage and unleashed a wave of pure, white light from within himself. The entity shrieked, its form writhing in agony as the light engulfed it. The museum echoed with the sound of its struggle, artifacts trembling on their shelves. Slowly, the entity weakened, shrinking into a tiny, pulsating ball of darkness. With a final burst of light, Ethan banished the entity. Silence descended, heavy and thick. He collapsed, drained but victorious. Dawn broke, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange. Outside the museum, Emily and David rushed to his side, relief washing over them as they saw him alive and well. The ordeal had taken its toll. Ethan was left physically and emotionally drained, but the entity was gone. They sealed the museum box, a silent testament to the darkness they had faced. Though the threat was neutralized, a sense of vigilance remained. They knew the darkness, like a shadow, was always lurking, waiting for an opportunity to return. Ethan continued his art, his drawings now depicting not monsters, but beautiful landscapes bathed in warm sunlight. He never forgot the darkness he had faced, but he learned to channel his fear into a powerful force for good. He vowed to use his art to remind people of the power of love and light in the face of darkness. The story of the boy with porcelain eyes became a legend whispered amongst artists, a cautionary tale of the darkness that can lurk within beautiful things. It served as a reminder that courage, love, and a flicker of light can overcome even the most terrifying shadows.